am your Declutter Diva. Who here has ever heard of clutter? Oh my, what a silly question. But who here knows how to permanently declutter or wants to learn how to permanently declutter and have fun while doing it? Come on, wave your hand with excitement. Say I do. Come on, yes, thank you. My name is Alita Lewis, and I am the mother of 11 amazing children and 33 grandchildren. And I am an emotional release expert, a healer, a mentor, and a certified belief breakthrough coach. Among many other things I am skilled and trained in. I am the founder of Connections to Wholeness Mentoring, and I am a wholeness expert. I also run my own house cleaning business called Spar-Klean for over 33 years. And now I am coupling this service with mentoring to teach people how to declutter their homes and their lives. As the Declutter Diva, I am passionate about helping people free their internal clutter, free themselves from all that clutter inside their minds and inside their emotions, so their real beauty reflects on the outside and into their surroundings to create a life of wholeness, of peace, and joy and fulfillment. But, you see, I was not always uncluttered, nor was I always whole or happy. And I certainly was not an expert. Oh my! I remember a time in my life when I was struggling with lots of internal chaos. And everything was stacking up around me, on the outside too. Stacks of dirty dishes, stacks of laundry, too much stuff. Chaos in my schedule. It was really hard for me to be on time to anything. I was overwhelmed in every area. And I was not happy. I felt disconnected and incomplete in my marriage. I was terribly ornery with my children, and I often felt alone, unheard, unimportant, unloved. I didn't know what my true purpose was, and I felt unfulfilled. How many of you have ever felt that way? My internal clutter and my stuffed emotions began showing up in my body and in my health and in physical pain. My fourth child and my second son was only about 2.5 months old. And my body was exhausted from the pregnancy and from birth and from new baby and not getting enough sleep. And I got strep throat. And I thought I got rid of it, but I kept pushing. And about 10 days later, I began suffering severe joint pain. First, it hit my ankle. My ankle swelled up, and the pain came in waves like lightning. And it was so excruciating. And the next day or two, it was my knee. And my knee swelled up, and I was in so much pain, I couldn't sleep. The doctor said that it was rheumatic fever caused from the strep, and he put me on antibiotics and on aspirin. But I was having vivid nightmares because I was allergic to aspirin, and I was not sleeping, and I was still in so much pain. I couldn't walk. I couldn't take care of my 4 children. My husband had to work and didn't really know how to help me. He felt kind of helpless, and so did I. So the children and I went to stay with my mom and my 2 teenage sisters. I was so grateful for their love and help, but the nightmare only got worse for me. As the inflammation moved through my body, it affected almost every joint at one time or another. My hands swelled up. I could no longer even hold a spoon to feed myself, and worst of all, I couldn't even hold my tiny son. I didn't have the strength in my arms, and it was, sometimes Mama would lay him on my chest, and I couldn't hold him there, and it would panic me because I was afraid I'd drop him. And I had so much pain. I just had to sit by and watch Mama and my sisters love my baby. I felt and walked like a very old woman. Of course, I felt totally helpless. And I knew the results of rheumatic fever could end up in chronic permanent rheumatoid arthritis for the rest of my life. I had children to care for, and I had work to do, and I did not want to suffer all my life with rheumatoid arthritis. So I was determined that I would not stay this way. And I wanted to get entirely well. So I began to study, and I learned how to cleanse my body. And I worked to avoid toxic foods and to take in those things that would be healing for my situation. And I also added very nourishing supplements. And within about 2 months, I was finally able to start taking care of my children again. And soon, I was able to go home. I still had quite a bit of aching and times when the inflammation would flare up in my joints, and I knew that I still needed to do more. But besides cleansing my physical body, one of the most important things I learned was that if I wanted to be completely well, I had to create my own internal happiness. And I sought my higher power, and I got an answer. And it was, cast your bread upon the water, and after many days it will return unto you. And I knew what this meant. As you give, so shall you receive. Or I needed to apply, as you sow, so shall you reap. And have patience. Just like growing a garden. Now this meant giving to my relationships, to my life, what I wanted back. It was treating my husband and my children, my family like I wanted to be treated, and planting and nourishing the seeds of what I wanted to harvest. I was creating my own joy garden. As I did this, all the pain left my body. My marriage began to heal. I became a more patient mother. I became happy. But I knew that I still needed to change something deep inside if I was to maintain that happiness. And I sought help fervently, and Providence brought into my life tools, powerful tools, to help heal my soul. I realized that I needed to change my way of thinking, and in order to do this, I had to take a really good look inside and a good look at myself. And underneath all my locked away clutter, I began to find myself. I'm reminded of a quote that says, "First cleanse the inward vessel, and then the outer vessel will be cleansed also." Now, many of us like to throw our clutter and our junk into closets and behind closed doors. And why do we throw it there? Well, because we don't want anyone else to see it, and we don't want to have to think about it either. And that's often what we do with our emotions. You know, we talk about decluttering on the outside and getting order in our environment, but we often don't think of it as pertaining to our inside. It's really important to understand this one very important thing. Emotions are not bad. They're neutral. It all lies in the way we use them. So I always believed that my negative emotions were bad or evil, and therefore to have them, I must be a bad person. But emotions are the windows to our soul, and they're a necessary human gift. Now, uncontrolled anger, when it's vented, or toxic, or passion that's used improperly, can be very harmful. But stuffing emotions and turning them off so we don't feel, that is also very harmful, and maybe in the long run more harmful. Without emotion, we would not have the ability to be happy or the ability to grow and change. Don't turn off your emotions. Don't say, "I wish I didn't have emotion." Emotions are a gift. Negative emotions are simply messengers for the unhealed part of our own being. Negative emotions help us to see our internal clutter so we can clean it up. Isn't that awesome? Let's list some things that could clutter up our minds. Can I have some shares from the audience? What are some things that you feel clutter up your mind? And great, stress and unhappy, unhealthy thoughts. Yes, negative self-talk. Perfect. Verbal and emotional or physical abuse. Oh, absolutely. Holding on to anger. Yeah, and hurt and fear. Thank you for your contributions. Worry. Trauma. Oh, certainly. Any trauma in our lives, whether past or present, can cause so much of these negative emotions and feelings. Violence, viewing it or being under the, yes, very good. Low self-worth or self-esteem. Absolutely. Schedule overload. Yes. Unreasonable demands of ourself. Not taking care of ourselves. Eating unhealthy. Listening to toxic things. But constant toxic, negative inner self-talk. Oh my. That is one of the biggest things that clutter our minds. Would you like to get rid of that? All right. I am going to teach you a really important tool that's a 3-step mind cleaning tool. How many steps does it have? Yeah, 3 steps. And what is it called? A mind cleaning tool. Who's ready to learn this 3-step mind cleaning tool? Raise your hand. All right. Here is this powerful tool, and it'll help you master the habit of knocking the negative out of your life and out of your mind. It can help you master decluttering inside out. The first step of this tool begins with R, and it stands for reveal. What does R stand for? Yes, reveal. When you feel a negative emotion or something that triggers you, you feel uncomfortable or uneasy, dis-ease you might call it, you stop and ask yourself, what is it? What is the thought behind this emotion? What limiting belief about myself is causing me to feel this way? Ask yourself questions like that. Be specific. And the first thought that comes up is usually correct. And then write it down. Now, I believed at that time in my life that I was not important. And so when I recognized that I was unhappy, the underlying belief is, I'm not important. I have no value. I don't feel valued. Now, I would like for each one of you to take out a pen and a paper and write down the most prevalent negative thought that you have every single day. And when you have written that down, please raise your hand. So what are you going to do? Take out a pen and paper, write down a prevalent negative thought, and raise your hand when done. I'll give you a few minutes to do that while I speak. Realize that if you have a hard time recognizing and being aware and revealing your negative emotions, take 3 deep breaths and ask yourself again in a quiet state of mind and stillness, what is it that I am feeling? And if you can write down your negative feeling or thought, either one still works. Who's ready? Looks like most of you are. Thank you. All right, we reveal our negative thoughts by keeping track of them, becoming aware of them, teaching ourselves to be aware of them, and the revelation is in writing them down. When we bring anything out of darkness into light By writing it down, then it no longer has the same power over us. It's not simmering in our subconscious, driving us. We now have control over it when we bring it into the light. The second step to this tool is invert. So write down an I on your paper and the word invert. What does invert mean? Yes, to turn something upside down or inside out. Great, thank you. I looked up the synonyms in a thesaurus to invert, and I was really impressed by the deeper meanings that were inferred, and they gave me a lot to think about. To turn something upside down or inside out, flip it upside down, toss it on its head, turn it inside out, reverse it. To reverse something means to make it be in remission. It's no longer having any weight or control of us. You're going the opposite direction. You're turning from darkness to light. It means to thwart. That means stop it in its tracks. So catch your negative thought and throw it out. Now your next exercise is to write down on your paper the inversion of that negative thought and belief that you had. For instance, mine was I'm not important. So the opposite or inversion of I'm not important is I am important, or I am valuable. So I'm going to give you a minute to write down your negative thought inversion. If you need some help, raise your hand or when you're finished. Good. This inversion is the truth about you. The dark one is a lie. And how do we know it's a lie? Because it makes us uncomfortable. It doesn't help motivate us. It makes us unhappy. Truth brings us peace and light and love and encouragement. And when you say the opposite of the lie, you know that that is an opposite and that it must be true. Now, I would like you to write down underneath that first inversion 2 more supportive I am positive present statements. For instance, my inversion was I am important, and a supportive statement to that would be I have immeasurable value. I am loved and needed. Those are 2 supportive statements. Remember that it is in the present that we create. So you want all your statements to be written in a present tense. And you can change it to I am, I have, I create. It's all great, but make sure it's in the present tense. All right, everyone, pen and paper. Write down 2 more supportive, positive I am statements. When you're through, please raise your hand. Looks like everybody's just about done. Would anyone be willing to share their results, the negative and the positive turnarounds? Thank you. Your name? Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for sharing. That's great. Those are really good. Does everybody know what they're doing now? This is the way you reveal and invert negative thoughts and feelings. Now the third step to this tool begins with a D, and that stands for declare. What does D stand for? Declare, that's right. Now, you're going to declare these true statements to your enemy, to yourself, to the world. Say them with conviction. Say them with energy. Say them with power. And give them some physical energy. Try 3 times, 3 voice inflections, 3 different stances. For instance, mine was, I am important. You go, I am important. I am important. I am important. And you just raise your voice. And if you want to add more physical to it, then just raising your hands up high, which brings awesome energy. You can scrunch up and go, I am important, and burst out. And different physical stances like that just help pop the energy into a bursting bubble, into waves of high energy. And when you do this 3 times with every negative emotion or thought every day, this is how you teach yourself to believe it and embrace it and declare it daily with physical and emotional power until you do believe it. And the more you do this, the easier it gets, and then soon that old negative thought quits coming back. I call this knocking the negative. Now the negative has no power over you when it's revealed, inverted, and declared. Use this tool daily. When we are stuffed up with negative emotion inside, it's often reflected outside by too much stuff and clutter around us. And often when stuffed inside, we stuff ourselves on the outside. We stuff ourselves with food. We stuff ourselves with toxic feedback. And all this stuff begins to collect on our bodies and in our bodies, and it's reflected on our bodies. Now we can cleanse our bodies, and we can clean up our thoughts, and we can release our stuck emotions. We can let go of extra fat stores, and we can declutter our space. And as you declutter inside, you'll also be ready to permanently declutter outside. All decluttering starts within. All healing, whether in body, in mind, emotion, in our spirits, whether improving our home, our relationships, losing weight, it all starts by reversing negative thoughts. All decluttering truly starts with seeing ourselves in a new light, being able to see our bodies, our lives, our surroundings in new light, and visualize it exactly how we want it to be. Is it okay if I tell you another story? I was violently raped as a 3-year-old child. And I was so traumatized by this that I did not remember the actual incident. I remembered everything around it, but not the incident itself. My healing was enabled by a very loving and supportive family. And I was a happy, resilient child. But I often wondered if I had fully healed from that experience. I felt like it still affected many areas of my life. And after attending Tam Pendleton's seminar, Vital Connections, I was pondering her suggestion to go back and to visualize ourselves at the age we believed we became broken or stuck, and to see if that little child still needed healing. To visualize our highest self giving that child the comfort and advice needed for healing. So, on a solo trip to visit my married daughters, I decided that the long drive was a perfect time for this exercise. And I had a difficult time visualizing, so I tried to remember the baby picture that hung on the hall wall while I was a child. And I tried to see myself at 3 years old. And as I tried to picture my little innocent face, I promptly found I was no longer visualizing. Suddenly I was sitting at the edge of a high mountain meadow surrounded by tall, stately pines. And out in this tall, blowing grass played a beautiful 3-year-old child chasing butterflies. I could hear her little giggles of laughter each time a butterfly eluded her grasp. And it was as real and as clear as the laughter of any little child, the laughter of my grandchildren. The sunlight made her blonde curls glow as the light and the love of God surrounded her. She beamed with the joy of life and wonderment. And I could hear her laughter ringing in my ears, and I felt the great love of God for her, and I was so amazed at her purity, her perfection, and exquisite beauty. I thought, I've never seen a more beautiful and perfect child, and I was filled with love for her. And then she stopped playing, and she noticed that I was watching her, and she smiled and eagerly came to me through the tall grass, and she climbed up onto my lap, and she laid her little head against my chest. And as I held her close to me, tears of joy began to pour down my face, and I was filled with such sweet longing, like I had waited years to hold this precious child in my arms, how I had missed her and how I had longed for her, as though she was my lost baby. And joy filled my heart to overflowing. And I sobbed as the tears ran down my cheeks. And this beautiful little girl looked up and saw my tears, and she reached up with her baby hand and she patted my cheek. And then I was back in the present, no longer visualizing. My tears were still flowing freely. I was still sobbing with joy. And her giggles were still ringing in my ears, just like I could still hear them. She was right there. And her warmth was still right here against my heart and in my arms. And I was filled with such peace and freedom and such joy that I laughed and I cried and I sobbed intermittently for about 2 hours as I drove. That experience was so profound. It filled me with such a joy and sense of freedom that was almost indescribable. And if somebody had been riding along with me, they might have thought I'd gone crazy. It's a good thing I was alone. But my inner child had healed my adult self, not the other way around. I knew something so deeply now. I knew how much God loved me. I knew who I really am. I am beautiful and full of light. And even if life has brought deep trials and heartache, the real me is perfect and unbroken. And so are you. No matter what struggles and trials life has brought to you, no matter what mistakes you have made, the real you is perfect and beautiful and unbroken. Learn to see yourself in this way, as perfect and unbroken. Visualize yourself as an innocent, tiny child in that first purity and perfection, and see your own inner beauty and see yourself in new light. Then you can see your surroundings in new light. Visualize things the way you want them, and you can create order out of any chaos, inside or out. Now, most of us let circumstances make choices for us, and life controls us, rather than our choosing to drive our own lives. Too many of us are buried under mountains of emotional clutter. I know what that feels like. I was sick, truly sick, of feeling overwhelmed by my mental and emotional clutter. I was under so much dis-ease that I experienced disease. So I chose to take action, and because of loving guidance in how to apply progress principles, instead of being bound by circumstances or being held back by negative emotion and limiting beliefs, I am driving my own life. My dreams are becoming a reality, and the goal ahead is becoming clearer and clearer. I'm now able to help others. I have true purpose, and I have witnessed the beauty of who I really am. I realize I do have value. I have influence. I can bless other people's lives, and I am joyful, at peace, and fulfilled. Life is too short to spend one moment being stuck in our clutter. We can choose our state of mind no matter what the circumstances. We can make every day a day of love, peace, gratitude, and joy. Come, declutter your life with me. Decluttering is such a grand adventure. It's going to be so much fun. Begin now to declutter your life. And as you declutter, the weight will fall off your shoulders and off your body, and new vistas will open up in your life. Let us begin now to declutter, and then watch, and your true and beautiful self will triumphantly emerge.